A very warm welcome. You're watching World 360. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. This week, the US president made yet another false claim. Donald Trump claimed that India will stop buying Russian oil, an assurance Trump claims was offered to him directly by Prime Minister Modi. The Ministry of External Affairs was quick to dismiss any such conversation. In fact, the MEA has reiterated that India's energy decisions are guided by what the consumer wants, with stable energy prices and secure supplies being the twin objectives of India's energy policy. That the US president continues to make false claims about India is no longer New Delhi's concern. The more burgeoning concern being the additional 25% tariff penalty that US has slapped on India. So India's task is cut out even as a fresh round of trade talks are on. But New Delhi's line is clear, that it will not compromise on its strategic autonomy, let alone get dictated by anyone on whom India should be doing business with. Even more so when it comes to Russia, an old and key strategic partner. The moot question being, can India even replace Russian oil? A question equally critical for the world economy. Remember, forcing India to halt Russian crude imports, that too without a universal embargo, also risks intensifying competition, especially for non-Russian barrels. What are the options? Buy a lot more from India's traditional oil suppliers in West Asia like Iraq, Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Perhaps also increase imports from other regions, West Africa and Latin America, even the US. But here's the catch. They come with higher costs, tighter availability and logistical challenges. Clearly, a sudden shift of Indian demand will tighten regional balances, meaning push up oil prices affecting both affordability and the world economy. It was for this very reason that US had allowed India's purchase of Russian oil after Moscow's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, as admitted earlier by the former US ambassador to India, Ambassador Eric Garcetti. So perhaps the US president would be better off with this realization that the way forward is more to do with a calibrated reduction of Russian oil imports, not a sudden complete halt. Let's bring you the headlines now. Hours after US President Donald Trump claimed that Prime Minister Modi assured him they will not buy oil from Russia, the Ministry of External Affairs denies any such conversation between the two leaders. The MEA has maintained that the country's import policies were guided by the objective to safeguard interests of the Indian consumer in a volatile scenario. China has defended its oil imports from Russia as legitimate and lawful, warning the US that it would take firm countermeasures if it imposed unilateral sanctions affecting Beijing's interests. As the truce deadline between Pakistan and Afghanistan ends, Pakistan Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif says that he is ready to hold talks with the Taliban. US President Donald Trump has praised Ambassador Designate of the United States to India, Sergio Gore, joking that he better represent US, not India. Trump's remarks come days after Sergio Gore visited India and met Prime Minister Modi and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. Israel has said that it was preparing for the reopening of Gaza's Rafah crossing with Egypt to let Palestinians in and out, but set no date as it's now blaming Hamas for violations of the US-mediated ceasefire. A dispute over the return of hostages' bodies held by Hamas earlier has also threatened to derail the truce and other unresolved elements of the plan. That also includes disarmament of militants like Hamas and Gaza's future governance. Will Hamas have any role to play in the future governance of Gaza? That's something Israel and even the Palestinian Authority is against. The big question being, will the Gaza peace plan even hold? CNN News 18's Zaka Jacob breaks down the details.
The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza continues to hold despite repeated violations. Israel killed at least 9 Palestinians in northern Gaza as the Israeli military warned Gazan residents to stay away from the areas where the IDF is still occupying. Israel has once again failed to open the critical Rafah crossing in the south. That's the only border point with Egypt, as was stipulated in the ceasefire agreement. It's also notified the United Nations it would reduce the amount of aid to be allowed into Gaza by half, up to 300 trucks per day. On the other hand, Hamas handed over the bodies of 8 slain hostages to Israel via the Red Cross, while Israel complained that the Palestinian terrorist group is moving too slowly with the 20 other corpses that they have to return. As part of the deal, Hamas was to release the dead bodies of 28 hostages and also release the 20 remaining who were still alive. While they've done the latter, they're currently dragging their feet on the former. But the basic outline of the ceasefire agreement had been on the table for many months now. By accepting it now, both sides, Israel and Hamas, have given up on some of their key demands. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had vowed to destroy Hamas completely, and yet, after 2 years of the war, Hamas is still the strongest player in Gaza today. Hamas, on the other hand, wanted a complete Israeli withdrawal and guarantees that Israel would not resume any military operations, both of which currently are unfulfilled. Israel is very much present in Gaza, and it is unlikely to ever fully leave. So why did both sides agree to the ceasefire, and why did it happen now? And the most important question, will this tenuous truce hold? Hamas had held on to the hostages as a form of leverage. Hamas seized the hostages when it attacked on October 7th because it knew that Israel would make major concessions to get the hostages back. In fact, if you were to look at historic precedent, back in 2011, Israel released more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for one soldier, Gilad Shalit, who was captured by Hamas. Hamas leaders were worried that giving up all the hostages would simply free up Israel to become even more aggressive in Gaza. And yet the hostages increasingly seemed like a slender thread that Hamas was clinging onto. Although their fate preoccupies many Israelis, this concern did not restrain Israel's military operations. In fact, Israel consistently prioritized killing Hamas, even if it endangered the hostages. In fact, the recent push that Israel was making deeper and deeper into Gaza City was the latest indication that the risk to the hostages was not a constraint on the IDF. With the American deal, Hamas can at least use the hostages to claim a form of victory, forcing Israel to withdraw, and in the process, gaining the release of up to close to 2,000 imprisoned Palestinians. Few Palestinians have escaped without any losses. In fact, the death toll in Gaza surpassed 67,000 last week. Gaza has been completely reduced to rubble. Palestinians there have long wanted this war to end. They've been on the verge of starvation and lacking medical care. They've been constantly displaced by Israeli military operations. So each additional day of this war prolonging was only agony for the ordinary Gazans. Now they're hoping that food and medicine can come back into Gaza and rebuilding will begin soon. But Israel could not ignore pressure from Donald Trump and from the White House. The US president is politically strong when it comes to Israel. If instead of Trump, Joe Biden had pushed Netanyahu for a deal and Netanyahu had resisted, almost all the Republicans and maybe even some Democrats would have sided with Israel. But when Trump does that, most Democrats agree with him, and Trump can carry his own Republican Party with him. Trump also personalizes politics. It's very transactional. And Netanyahu was worried that if he snubs President Trump, then he will neither forgive nor forget. Defying Trump in an increasingly unpopular war was both politically and strategically risky for Netanyahu. Also, most Israelis recognize the importance of strong ties with America. Netanyahu, mind you, is also a master of politics. As Israel enters election season very soon, elections are to be held early next year, Netanyahu can now position himself as the man who shattered Hamas and Hezbollah. He's the one who set back Iran's nuclear program. The current deal between Israel and Hamas is a major accomplishment. It's an important step forward for Gaza as well as for Israel. But making this ceasefire last, making this peace last, is going to be even harder than achieving it.
Avihai Brodutch is an Israeli survivor of October 7 attacks. His wife Hagar and 3 young children, along with their slain neighbor's daughter, were taken hostage during the October 7 attacks and remained in Hamas custody in Gaza for 51 days before getting released in November of 2023. In an exclusive conversation with CNN News 18, Avihai recalls his family's ordeal and stresses that Hamas cannot be trusted. Listen in to this heart-wrenching conversation.
After how many hours of fighting did you discover
that your wife and 3 children were taken as hostages?
After some hours of fighting, I managed to pull out my phone and start to text my wife. At first, she said that everything is all right, but at around 11, that's just over 4 hours after the whole ordeal started. That was the last message I got from her, and the last message was terrorists are coming in, and they came into our house. They broke through the window and they opened the safe room door, which you cannot lock from inside. And they just went inside and there was screaming. My wife, Hagar, she hid the kids under the sheets. But they found them pretty quickly. They started screaming. Abigail kept on hiding. And they, at gunpoint, they didn't fire because Hagar screamed at them that it's only a girl. And they picked up the sheets and they saw this little girl that both her parents had just been shot and killed a few hours before. And now they picked all of them up, my wife, my 3 kids, and Abigail. They asked for the car keys, and they all shoved all 5 of them inside our car and drove off to Gaza with my wife and my 3 kids.
So they were gone when you returned after fighting the terrorists?
I got injured on that fight by an RPG. I was injured from shrapnel, and I couldn't walk. I had a friend of mine that came over to try and help me, and he got shot as well, and he was wounded very badly. And I couldn't go and rescue them. I had to keep on fighting while being wounded. I could hardly move. Mm-hmm. We were rescued in the afternoon, and I was flown over to the hospital. And a nurse, when I landed at the hospital, at Sheba Hospital in Israel, a nurse handed me her phone, and she asked me if I wanted to call my family so they could come and visit me, and I told her that my whole family is gone.
So you had assumed that they're dead?
Definitely. I saw what was going on, and...
Okay. Now the scene shifts to Gaza in my head. I mean, it's all so vivid as you were talking. What was Hagar's experience there? How did she protect herself and the 3 children in Gaza? How did Hamas treat her? There's so many questions that are coming to my mind.
At first when they were taken there, the terrorists had actually opened the doors, and they took my daughter and they showed her to the people, the gathering of the people over there, and they were shouting. It was in amusement, and they took my wife by the hair and they showed her to everyone, and everybody was cheering, and they were very proud of what they did. And they took them to an apartment, and they were locked there in a room. After a while, after about 2 weeks, they moved them to another apartment, and they started starving them. And Hagar was not only with my kids, she had another girl that had seen her mom and dad being shot and killed
daughter.
Before her eyes, that's right. And that little girl needed a mom, and she had Hagar, and Hagar had to take care of her. But kids being kids, she's the same age as Uriah, my youngest, and he was envious, and he needed his mother as well. And she had 4 kids to take care of, and they started starving them. And they had lice all over, and she had to take care of them with nothing around. And they got 1 piece of bread each every day. So she had to share her piece with 4 other kids, which were fighting over food that was thrown over to them on the floor. They had all lost a lot of weight. They were kept in the dark. They came back very pale. and they suffered a lot. And every day they thought that they were going to be shot because the people watching over them were armed terrorists.
You've also had your share of struggle when they were gone. You sat outside the defense ministry in Israel demanding their return. And they were released in the first phase in November of 2023. So if you could please describe that moment when they returned, when you saw them. I know you've described it as a miracle. How did that happen?
Well, by far it was the best day of my life. Waiting for my family at first that I thought were slaughtered. And then I heard that they were kidnapped. And then I was waiting for this deal, and they were released on the third day of the deal. And every day I waited for the news of their return. And on the third day I got that news. And, I went over to our house in Kfar Aza and picked up everything that I could. There was a ceasefire, so I could go over there. And I picked up dolls, and I picked up shirts, and I picked up bags of Hagar, and I shoved them all in the car, and I went over to Schneider Hospital, which was supposed to accept them. It's a children's hospital, so it accepted the children that came back on that November. And I waited for them in the hospital, and it's on the 6th floor that they returned, the ward. And there was a big window, and we were standing there and looking down, waiting for the helicopter to land, and the helicopter had landed, and I knew what was inside. It was my family that I had been waiting for so long. But they wouldn't let me go down. They told me that I had to wait in the elevator, and waited in front of the elevator, waited for the doors to open to have my family come out. And the elevator door opened, and my daughter was the first one to come out running, and she saw me and she said, "Abba, Dad," and she jumped up and hugged me. And right after was Yuval, my second son, my middle son, and then after him was Uriah. And Uriah, he was smiling like like I came back from America giving presents. That's how he was smiling. They were all pale, and but they were so beautiful. And my wife came, the last one. She was crying. She looked miserable. That's when Hagar, she thought I was dead the whole time. And that's on that day she heard that I was alive. Of course, she was overwhelmed, and she saw me. She hugged me, but she was just overwhelmed, and she cried. My kids were happy, but she was crying, and it was just.
This was a new lease of life for all of you, indeed.
Definitely. Was
How
a rebirth.
did Hagar keep herself so strong? I mean, it's unimaginable the kind of Herculean strength she has displayed, because it's not just herself, but she's kept all these children, 3 your own and 1 your neighbor's daughter, all of them alive, keeping them strong. How did she keep their morale up?
She's amazing. I always said that if I had to pick someone to be with my kids in captivity, it would be her. And I know that I was right. She did it. She held them together under terrible circumstances. And she had a little girl that had seen her parents being
You want to have water?
killed. No, I'm good. I'm good, thank you.
I know life's never going to be the same. Revisiting this day, I'm sure it's been a new beginning of sorts. Do you celebrate their return every year?
Oh, we celebrate every day. Of course, November 26th is a very special day for us. We're going to celebrate it. It's going to be 2 years since their return, since their rebirth. But it's very hard to celebrate. We have a lot of orphans in the kibbutz, in our village. I have a lot of friends that I lost. Some of them died right next to me.
What are your hopes from the ceasefire? Do you think, A, will this hold? B, can Hamas be trusted?
I think we learned that Hamas cannot be trusted. Hamas did this massacre. They killed, just ordinary people, women and children, and just ordinary men. And we know who they are. We know what we're up against. But I know the Palestinian people want this to end. You know, I know mothers want their children to live on. I think the Palestinians don't want Hamas to lead them. I think they want a new leadership. I think they're going to get this new leadership because they suffered so much. And I'm sure they want, just like I want to live in peace, I'm sure they want to live in peace.
So how possible is a two-state solution in your viewpoint, given that whether it's Israel or the people in Palestine, the Palestinian Authority itself, do not want Hamas to be part of the governance in Gaza? So do you believe that a peaceful and prosperous coexistence through a two-state solution is possible for Israel and Palestine?
You know, what I think is that things need to be solved in agreement between two people, between two neighbors, and between two enemies. I'm not sure if the two-state solution is the solution. I'm not sure that it isn't. What I know is that diplomacy is definitely the solution. I think nothing can be forced upon the Jews and the Arabs, between the Israelis and the Palestinians. It cannot be forced upon either side. And, you know, if it is the solution, if it's going to be peace, then it's a brilliant solution. If another solution is a solution, then that's a brilliant solution.
So many are talking about that Hamas is still operating in Gaza, so much so a verified video has gone viral where you can see they are executing people they believe have acted as Israel's spies. At the same time, you have the idea of also controlling portions of Gaza. What do you think can ensure that Hamas is disarmed and demilitarized? Do you think that's where the role of the United States, particularly the US president, comes in to add more pressure? Because that's what he said, that if Hamas doesn't cooperate, all hell will break loose.
Definitely. I think that President Trump has a lot of power in him. I think we can see what he did so far. He got this deal through, and we know he wants peace in West Asia. And I think the people, the Palestinians, are going to do their job and get them out. I think they want them out. And I think the Arab world, if it's Egypt, and if it's the countries that are surrounding Israel, and the Muslim world, you know, if it's even Turkey or Qatar, they're going to put their pressure because it's in their interest to make this conflict end. I think it's in the whole of West Asia's interest to have this conflict end, and I think we cannot end it with Hamas, and everybody knows this. It's just obvious. It was there. We know what they did. We can see what they're still doing. We got to end this. I'm sure the people of Gaza don't want to see shooting in their streets. They want it to end, and that's the solution, to get them out, and it's going to happen.